Good day again, everyone. In this video presentation, let's move on to our next module, which is Module 5, titled Representative Texts and Authors from Africa. In this module, we are expected to identify representative texts and authors from Africa, value the contributions of the 21st century literature writers from Africa, and write a close analysis and critical interpretation of a text. So now, let's move on to our lesson proper.
African literature. Africa is the world's second largest and second most populous continent after Asia in both cases. The continent is bounded on the west by the Atlantic Ocean, on the north by the Mediterranean Sea, on the east by the Red Sea and the Indian Sea, and on the south by the mingling waters of the Atlantic and Indian Ocean. Africa is a continent located between the Atlantic Ocean and the Red Sea, as well as the Indian Ocean. African literature generally refers to a comprehensive, complex, and creative literature of and from Africa. But different critics belonging to different schools of thought have provided varying interpretations about African literature. Chinua Achebe said that he doesn't see African literature as one unit but as a group of associated units. In fact, the sum total of all national and ethnic literature of Africa. While Nobel laureate Nadine Gordimer believed that African writing done in any language by African themselves and by other of whatever skin color who share the African experience and who have African-centered consciousness. African literature refers to diverse and complex body of work produced in and about Africa. Chinua Achebe views African literature as a collection of related units. Rather than a single entity, Nadine Gordimer, a Nobel laureate, believes that African writing is done by Africans and others.
There may be three distinctly and widely accepted categories of African literature: traditional oral literature of Africa, literature written in indigenous African languages, literature written in European languages. Oral literature including stories, dramas, riddles, histories, myths, songs, proverbs, and other 87 expressions employed to educate and entertain children. Oral histories, myths, and proverbs additionally serve to remind whole communities of their ancestors' heroic deeds, their past, and the precedents for their customs and traditions. Children are frequently educated and entertained by oral literature, which includes stories, dramas, riddles, histories, myths, songs, proverbs, and other 87 expressions. Oral literature can also be used to remind entire communities of their ancestors' heroic actions, history, and precedents for their customs and traditions.
Famous contemporary African writer.
Chinua Achebe was a Nigerian novelist, poet, professor, and critic. He is one of the world's most widely recognized and praised writers. He is often called the father of modern African literature. Chinua Achebe wrote some of the most extraordinary works of the 20th century. He died on March 21, 2013 in Boston. He was 82 years old. His famous novel, Things Fall Apart, 1958, is one of the most widely read books in the world. Is a devastating depiction of clash between traditional tribal values and effects of colonial rule, as well as a tension between the masculinity and femininity in highly patriarchal society. Achebe is also a noted literary critic, particularly known for his passionate critique of Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, 1899, in which he accuses the popular novel of rampant racism through its othering of African continent and its people. He is a Nigerian author, poet, and critic. Chinua Achebe is also recognized as the most important person in contemporary African literature. Things Fall Apart, his first novel and magnum opus, is a seminal work in Afro-Academy literature. And Achebe is the author of 5 novels, 4 children's books, 6 collection of essays, and several volumes of poetry and short tales, and is often regarded as the father of African literature. Here is some of the famous works of Chinua Achebe.
Next in line is Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie is a Nigerian writer whose works range from novels to short stories to nonfiction. He is part of a new generation of African writers making the literary world by storm. Adichie's works are primarily character-driven, interweaving the background of her native Nigeria and social and political events into the narrative. Her novel Purple Hibiscus 2003 is a Bildungsroman depicting the life experience of Cabili and her family during a military coup, while her latest work Americana 2013 is an insightful portrayal of Nigerian immigrant life and race relations in America and the Western world. Adichie's works have been met with overwhelming praise and have been nominated for and won numerous awards, including the Orange Prize and Book Prize. Okay. Chimamanda Adichie. We risk a critical misunderstanding if we only hear one account about another person or place. She shares the narrative of how she discovered her own cultural voice. This presentation took place during a TED conference in San Francisco, recounts the story of how she discovered her own cultural voice, and warns that we risk a fundamental misunderstanding if we just hear one account about another person or culture. This presentation was given at a TED conference. Here are some of her notable work.
Moving on, Akwe Arma, the next author stated in the module. Akwe Arma is a Ghanaian writer best known as an essayist, as well as having written poetry, short stories, and books for children. Arma novels are known for their intense, powerful depictions of political devastation and social frustration in Arma's native Ghana, told from the point of view of the individual. His works were greatly influenced by French existential philosophers such as Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus, and as such hold themes of despair, delusionment, and irrationality. His most famous work, "The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born", centers around an unnamed protagonist who attempts to understand himself and his country in the wake of post-independence. Ekwe Arma is a Ghanaian novelist best known for "The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born", 2000 Seasons, and "The Healers". He also essayist who has authored poetry, short stories, and children's books. Arma was a Ghanaian writer whose writing dealt with the growing moral and spiritual divide that exists in his home Ghana between appearance and reality, spirit and material, and past and present. Here is the one of the famous work he did, "The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born". Arma said that he is still far from being beautiful country. There is still hope, although it has not yet manifested itself fully. The beautiful ones have not yet to be born, in the sense that Ghana is not yet a land where beauty reigns supreme after independence.
Mariam Ba, one of the famous writers, stated in the module. Mariam Ba is a Senegalese author and feminist, whose French language novels were both translated into more than a dozen languages. He is one of Africa's most influential women authors. Mariam Ba is known for her powerful feminist texts, which address the issues of gender inequality in her native Senegal and wider Africa. Mariam Ba herself experienced many of the prejudices facing women. She struggled for an education against her traditional grandparents and was left to look after her 9 children after divorcing a prominent politician. Her anger and frustration at the patriarchal structures which define her life spill over into her literature. Her novel So Long a Letter 1981 depicts simultaneously its protagonist's strength and powerlessness within marriage and wider society. Marianne was a Senegalese feminist and author. Her two novels in French have been translated into over a dozen languages. Her debut novel, Une is Longue Letter, expresses her dissatisfaction with the destiny of African women, and she was a women's rights campaigner. In August 1981, she died at the age of 52. Her work and enthusiasm were centered on the challenges women face in traditional African civilizations. Here is some of her famous works, but she was known in her novel So Long a Letter. Marianne grapples with shifting social climates and the role women play in them is So Long a Letter. She focuses on the ways in which education empowers women, whereas a lack of knowledge leaves them stunted and with a few possibilities.
Less famous writer on the module is Nurdin Farah. Nurdin Farah is a Somali novelist. He has also written plays both for stage and radio, as well as short stories and essays. Nurdin Farah has written numerous plays, novels, and short stories, all of which revolve around his experiences of his native country. The title of his first novel, From a Crooked Rib, stems from a Somalian proverb, God created woman from a crooked rib, and anyone who tried to straighten it, break it, and is a commentary on the sufferings of women in Somalian society through the narrative of a young woman trapped in an unhappy marriage. His subsequent works feature similar social criticism, dealing with themes of war and post-colonial identity. Here are some of his notable work. From a Crooked Rib, his first novel was published in 1970 and he is considered one of the cornerstones of modern East African writing. He has also authored short stories and articles, as well as stage and radio play. He is recognized for his vivid imagination and frequently virtuous use of English, his adopted language, and in European language. He was universally regarded as the most important Somali writer. The determination of one lady to maintain her dignity in a society that believes God made woman from a crooked rib, and everyone who tries to straighten it breaks it, is shown in his works.
Things Fall Apart, the meaning of that novel is it follows Okonkwo, a leader in an Igbo village in Nigeria in the 1890s, as he fights with personal issues as well as the effects of British colonization. The book describes Igbo society's rich traditions and intricacies, providing an insider's perspective on the African experience.
Things Fall Apart is a narrative about how the potential and actuality of change affect diverse characters. In a civilization of the cusp of change, the debate over whether change or tradition should take precedence sometimes involves issues of personal prestige. Things Fall Apart isn't a real story in 12th tradition sense. It's rather metaphorical or historical fiction.
Things Fall Apart employs a third-person omniscient perspective to educate his readers about the worth of his culture as an African, implying that the narrator is aware of and expresses all the characters' thoughts and feelings. And Things Fall Apart is a story about how the potential and reality of change affect various aspects of his culture as an African, which means that the narrator understands and communicates the thoughts and feelings of all the characters. When something falls apart, it breaks into pieces, because it is old or badly made. The work was never finished and bit by bit the building fell apart. Chinua Achebe describes Igbo culture in Things Fall Apart, which is set in Nigeria in the early 90s and includes polytheistic religion, father-son inheritance, farming traditions, and belief in evil spirits. That's all for Module 5. Thank you for listening.